Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Tempty. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Dr. Eugene Manley joining us. Dr. Manley is the founder and CEO of the SCHEQ Foundation and comes to us with over 20 years of experience across engineering, molecular and cell biology, nonprofit strategy, and workforce development. Today, we're going to be talking about improving access to careers in STEM fields, and that's STEM, STEM, including medical on the back end, STEM fields, and improving healthcare equity. Welcome to the show, Eugene.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to chat with you today.
Did I get the acronym pronounced correctly?
Yes, correctly. So many people, what does it mean? And it's like, if you think about it, just think of it as SCHEQ, but without the R.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I didn't want to make light of the organization's
but
name.
It's not a green organization like that.
Right. Okay. Well, Eugene, before we get started, please give our listeners the elevator pitch version of your story.
Well, elevator pitch. I'm Eugene Manley Jr., and I'm a scientist, engineer, and patient advocate that works with organizations to help them understand the needs of diverse and underrepresented scholars and patients and help them develop frameworks to improve access, outcomes, and care delivery.
Excellent. That is really the elevator pitch. So if you had one event in your life that just really accelerated your career, what would that be?
I would say one event or one thing that really propelled me to a career in science was, I think I was in 11th grade of high school, and my science department head realized I had an aptitude for science. And she told me to apply for, there was an apprenticeship program that Michigan Cancer Foundation, which is what they were called then, now they're Carmano's Cancer Institute. They had a program every summer that would bring high school kids in to work in some of the different labs. And so I did that program for 8 weeks, and I worked with, I think, leukemia cell lines and tried to test 60 different therapeutics. But then what that taught me is that there are these research programs out there, and then I was hooked. And then every summer, even though I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering, I found a biomedical research lab to apply for and do work in every summer. So that's probably one of the biggest influences on my scientific career.
Yeah, that's great. And those programs are all around us. They're not really well advertised, so it's great that you had a mentor that helped point you in that direction. So let's get on to the SCHEQ Foundation, and I'll do my very best not to slip and say Shrek during the interview. But what's the SCHEQ Foundation's primary focus? What does success look like to you on a daily basis?
Well, our broader mission is to increase STEM workforce diversity and to improve outcomes for underserved populations navigating the cancer care continuum. I would say immediately, since we're still scaling, the most measurable success is making sure that we have patients that understand basic medical information, can advocate for care they're entitled to, and in particular, our lung cancer patients that are diverse and underserved feel seen, heard, and know who is working on their behalf so that they can get more access to treatments and therapies at earlier stages.
Excellent. Thank you. And I just want to be super clear for listeners about what STEM means, because we tend to just throw around terminology on the show without defining it. So STEM means science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine. So it's STEM. So just wanted to define that for listeners. Let's get specific about STEM education. Now, are we making progress, in your opinion, in exposing and nurturing individuals from underrepresented populations to careers in STEM? And as you're answering that question, think about the college and university administrators and what they can do to help make more progress.
We had been making some progress until probably a year or two ago. Uh, and there were lots of programs, and specifically, there were a lot of, they were called SURE, summer undergraduate research experiences. I did some McNair program stuff. I've done some AGEP, which is, oh my God, I forgot this acronym. Oh my God, Association for Graduate Education and the Professoriate. I think it was an NSF funded program. Wow, I cannot believe I
You got
remembered
it.
that.
You got it.
But a lot of these programs are designed to let universities bring in trainees. Some of these are focused on diverse trainees. Some are just focused on trainees in general to come in and do summer research experiences. And then even when I was out in Oregon, they had students doing summer research, but I would get to work with them at the end of the summer and help them work on their resumes and, making summaries of their research and their, little pitch about what they've done. So that was really great. So I say that administrators, we still need to focus on diversifying the workforce, regardless of the pressures that are on these systems. Because if we don't diversify the workforce, then we continue to have research and studies done on patients and samples that don't reflect the actual incidence of the disease. And then it's harder to get these things implemented because then you have a therapy and it's developed only on European descent populations. And then they do a trial and there's no trial coordinators, no trial sites, no community liaisons that are from the community you're trying to reach. And so then you never get these underserved communities. And what we see is that if you engage the people and ask them would they participate, they're more likely to participate. But so often they aren't asked to participate, so they continue to be excluded. So I just think we have to keep trying to develop these programs to get these kids exposed early. But I think this goes even earlier than college. It really, college, you've already overcome a lot to get there. But if my personal take is, since I grew up in Detroit, if you want to really increase the pipeline, you want to try to start engaging kids around third grade. I'm not saying that from scientific evidence, but it's just based on where I grew up. If you can engage the kids around third grade, you will find those that might have a science aptitude, and then you try to nurture and foster that. Because if you wait longer than that, then they find sports, video games, and everything else, and then science does not become cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I want to go back to something you were talking about earlier, which is the systemic bias that gets injected into systems. And this can be everything from training AI models, which is at the forefront of the news all around us right now, to medical research studies, to, how workplaces get designed. If you're not asking questions of diverse populations, if you're not including everybody in the study, you're going to get suboptimal results. Am I on the right track there?
That is correct. Particularly in lung cancer, we see that there is still significant underrepresentation of diverse populations in trials. I think there was a study 3-4 years ago that showed clinical trials maybe had 2 to 4% of the patients in those trials were Black. And many of these were leading immunotherapy trials. And then you get to post-market analysis, which is like after your phase 3 trial. And then you're seeing these different immune adverse effects in these populations. And then you're having to recalibrate. So this is why it's really important to think about those populations that are impacted by the disease when you're designing the trial and not as a forethought or afterthought.
Yeah. So let's go also back to going back into the third grade. We're not going to go quite that far back, but let's do a mentorship moment here. Suppose that you have a high school student of color sitting in front of you right now who comes from a background that's filled with challenges. They're interested in building a career in the sciences. Somebody got to them in the third grade and said it was cool. What's your advice to this individual? And what's your advice to their parent or guardian?
Oh, this individual sounds like me. This is pretty easy. It's depending on how rough or bad or challenging environment, you're going to tell them, you're going to have to try to stick with the science, really appreciate it, learn it. You're likely going to face a lot of challenges because you're going to get teased and be called a nerd and a sellout and all kinds of things because you're in the science. But I was stubborn and headstrong, and I knew that my education was my way to escape getting out of the poverty that I was in. So my education was my shining star. I always looked for it. And so you also have to tell them that they have to keep studying, be inquisitive, try to do research early as possible, because now, because everyone has this checkbox to get in college, they now expect you to already come in with research experience, which is not as easy to get. So really thinking about identifying programs, hopefully locally at your university or one of the universities that you can participate in over summer to try to start getting that experience before you go into even undergrad. And then once you're in college, trying to make sure you pick a degree and path that will allow you to succeed. And that means if you're taking intro bio and intro chemistry, so often these are called weeder courses. They tend to filter out the population, but you really have to let them know they have to study a lot. Often universities have these, what are they called? Not community groups. They have not working groups. They're like study centers. And so make you sure you take advantage of those and take advantage of all the office hours and ask all the questions. Make sure you stand on top of this stuff because it is easy to fall behind. And I would say to the parents of that scholar, they're going to likely not understand a lot of what the kid is talking about and will be very confused and say, just nod and say go, but just encourage them and let them know it's okay. Because when you're doing something so unique and different, it is easy to get pulled back into things that won't allow you to flourish.
Yeah, so I'm hearing curiosity, I'm hearing persistence, and I'm hearing self-belief, and then ultimately support from the network that sits around this individual.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, Eugene, let's take a really short commercial break, and let's talk more on the back half of the show about healthcare equity. Want to understand money, markets, and the economy to make better financial decisions? I'm Andy Tempe. Join me every Saturday morning for Money Lessons with Andrew Tempe on YouTube or your favorite podcast streaming service. And we're back with Dr. Eugene Manley talking about healthcare equity and STEM education. So I like to run these thought experiments. Eugene, you've got the CEO of a major hospital system sitting in front of you right now. They're concerned about healthcare equity and the system's historical lack of focus in the area. What's your advice to help them improve healthcare equity in their organization?
This is easy. The first thing you have to do is realize that health equity, at least my definition of health equity is about intentionality. You have to be intentional about addressing a disparity or an equity that is impacting a group and then developing a program or intervention that reduces the disparity or improves the outcome or gets them to the same level as a baseline. So you have to understand that is in essence health equity. It doesn't matter if it's race, ethnicity, income, rural. Like you have to understand you have to intentionally address a problem to see an improvement. And then two, I would say you have to think of it from the lens of that population. If you think of it from the majority, you're going to miss everything. You have to have due diligence. You have to have people from different perspectives in the program, in the development, in the assessment, in the outcomes, and then engage with the people that it's supposed to impact. So you have to, start specific and then have a broad team. And then and then as your metrics, typically we always think about measuring numbers, but sometimes health equity is not about numbers. It is, do patients feel seen? Do they feel heard? Do they feel respected? Do they actually feel that their provider or system has their best interests in mind? These are things that are not necessarily quantifiable, but they also are very, very important to the patient experience.
Yeah, I want to be blunt. We're living through an era right now where we're having societal conversations about racism and equity, and DEI is now some dirty word that we're not supposed to say. I'll just say it, and can. And so we're quote unquote supposed to be thinking about this beautiful level playing field where everybody is the same, but it doesn't work that way in medicine, does it? A human being is not a human being is not a human being. We have to be to get the best results, be very cognizant about the physiological differences and different responses to treatments, et cetera. I'm getting that kind of sort of right, aren't I?
Yes, well, there's never been equality in medical care, especially in the US. If you just
Yeah.
think, I mean, I could give you numerous examples, but I'll give you two. Like, let's look back early 1900s at the Flexner Report. He was not a physician, but he went around making assessments of all these Black HBCU medical schools and determined that most of these should not be operational. So he basically closed the bulk of Black medical schools. So we were lucky, I think, had 2 or 3 to survive. And now we might be back up to 5. But before he closed them, it was more than, I think it was between 7 or 11. There's so many generations of Black doctors that didn't even get to be in the workforce. And the reason that's important is the majority of Black medical doctors come from these HBCU medical schools because they are in these communities that are often underserved. So that's really, and then, but and then he had some eugenics principles and just said that, Blacks were only good enough to do the cleaning and sanitation. And so, but this is persistent through our whole medical ecosystem. You think of the people that have been disenfranchised or mistreated. You have the Mississippi appendectomy. We have examples of syphilis, and I don't mean, we know what we were doing, but we didn't want to give the patients the antibiotics, and you let this continue to go on forever. And then that is what led finally to some of the regulations from the preventative health services. But it used to be a wild, wild west. And it's like, well, we can do this. And there's Guatemala STD studies. There's so many things that have been done on Black women, marginalized sex workers, for, I know, not for the content of your show, but any marginalized group, they have been some kind of experiment or study done on because they were deemed to be expendable, and for lack of a better term.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for that. Let's move on to, we're going to do 2 mentorship moments in this show. Now, you've got an advocate for a patient of color sitting in front of you right now. And for listeners who might not be familiar with what a patient advocate is, like I would be a patient advocate for my mother if she got sick and was in the hospital. So you've got a patient advocate sitting of a patient of color sitting in front of you right now. They're concerned that the patient they're advocating for is not getting the treatment they deserve due to bias and inequity. What's your advice to this advocate to get the care that their loved one deserves?
So I want to say that first, a patient can also be a patient advocate. And then a patient advocate can also have a patient advocate. So they are one and the same, but really, when you're a patient advocate, you're trying to advocate for the best care that you can get. Now, often this means systems don't want to listen to you or will ignore you. So you have to make sure, and I learned this from my own experience with my reconstructive surgery this year, is that you read your medical records in real time and you have someone that can read the records and flag things that are inaccurately charted, because charting is where many decisions get made or not made, and then that impacts care. So if it's charted at this time and it was not that, then insurance say, well, it's in here. And so make sure your records are accurate. Make sure you've done your research. If you don't like what you're hearing, you are entitled to get a second opinion. You can find leadership. If you feel you're really being disrespected, you can try to find the chief nursing officer. You can find the patient they have patient advocacy teams at the hospitals. Sometimes they can be helpful. And so you can find those, but then you still have to have that frank discussion, which is sometimes hard, making sure that that physician knows that you know what is best for your care and that you try to get them to listen. And if they don't listen, you are within your rights to go find another provider.
All right. Well, great advice. Eugene, what have we not discussed today that you want to make sure that our listeners walk away with?
I think that, the arc of leadership and leading teams, it's not straightforward and linear as people think. I grew up, with chronic conditions, and it's a miracle that I'm alive today. And I had undiagnosed ADHD, but it explains so much of my interactions in different environments. I never fit in a box. I never processed information the same. I was always hyper. And so that was called unprofessional. And then you get used to being told no, or you sort of try to moderate your behavior, and then you're like, wait a minute, nothing's wrong with me. But also that often is what makes a lot of people with ADHD become leaders and champions for those that are marginalized and disenfranchised. We know what it's like to be isolated. So we really drive to make sure people that can't advocate for themselves can be heard. So that's sort of the whole arc of leadership to neurodivergence to helping people.
That's awesome. Thank you for that, Eugene. Let's have a little fun with 3 lightning round questions, shall we?
Yep. Okay.
All right. Dr. Eugene Manley Jr., you've just won a $100 million lotto jackpot, but there's a stipulation that 50% of your net winnings go to one philanthropic organization or cause. This may be a softball, but who do you pick?
Can I pick myself?
Sure.
I I know you should not do that, but really, yes, nonprofits are really struggling, and minority-led nonprofits are really, really not getting funding or resources to carry out their missions, and we are often still at the front line helping these communities who still don't have resources, don't have knowledge, and don't have agency. So it's just critical that we still make sure they can function and flourish and survive.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the work that you're doing. Now I give you access to a really little time machine, and you can send a message to an earlier version of Eugene Manley. What's the message, and what previous version do you send it to?
Ooh, this is a very good question. I think I sent it to this is gonna be childhood version of Eugene. Wow, you put me in a spot. I would say probably the 9-year-old version who, spent a lot of summers in West Virginia as a kid, because that's where my family is from, but we grew up in Detroit and saw a lot of racism. And then as I went through academia, I kept getting put in boxes and told what I couldn't do, what I couldn't amount to. And I would just tell that person, just keep being yourself, be stubborn, be bold, and just disregard people that are not on your same wavelength. Because if you let negative energy get in and you're trying to succeed, it's a good path to burnout. So just keep doing what you do, and just pick your tribe and crew and just be true to that, and only keep good people around you.
Pick your tribe and your crew. That's awesome. Eugene, we're all works in progress, always growing, hopefully. What are you focused on right now in your personal journey of growth?
Actually, this is very interesting. This is very pressing question. I'm in this phase of broadening my expertise and skill set. So I'm working on PMP management. I don't know how I'm doing this, but I'm working on PMP certification. I'm working on expanding our, opportunities for speaking opportunities and workshops, and just getting more word out about the work that we are doing. And this is particularly interesting, is that my advocacy has gotten strengthened based on the experiences I had at the hospital system earlier this year, and it's gotten me more into policy and really understanding that side of care delivery from a hospital lens and how that impacts patient outcomes.
Excellent. Well, Eugene, thank you so much for being on the show today. Where can folks get a hold of you if they're interested?
You can find us on LinkedIn with, Eugene Manley Jr. The org is also on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. They can be found under STEM, 2M's, SCHEQ, because we couldn't put the acronym in. And so, and then also on Blue Sky, you can find us on SCHEQ, but we aren't on there as much. But those are the best places to find us, or email us info@SCHEQ.org if you want to learn more about our work or partner or need a workshop or something of the sort developed.
Excellent. Thank you for being on the show, Eugene.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
All right. Well, my name is Andy Tempty. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all the major streaming services as well as out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public educational good with your friends, your family, your colleagues, and maybe a neighbor. The show was produced by Nicholas Tempty, and we'll see you next time on the Balancing Act.